I'm going to get into the start of our sermon, but this is just a good reminder for you guys that I am first and foremost a youth leader, so I have an activity for you, but I've put the instructions up on the PowerPoint. It's called the Noodle Game. So I have some noodles. And I've done this at youth group before. So the idea is that you find a partner, preferably not the person that you came with. The hint is that it's easier if it's not the person that you came with. You create a standing high five. So I need a volunteer to show you how to do this. I also need these. Can I have a volunteer?
I'll come, Hannah.
Thank you, Joyce. So, we start with a standing high five, and we hold it. Okay? My hands are cold, sorry. So what we now do is we take turns to share something that I don't think you know about me. A really, really easy hint, if you're struggling, is today I had muesli for breakfast with yogurt, and then I add a pull slice in between our hands. Then Joyce will have a turn. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay, I spoke a lot of teriyaki this week.
Very good. And then you would put a pool noodle in between our hands. Do we get the idea? And then we keep going. And we try and make our pool noodle stack as big as possible. Okay?
Whoa.
Is everyone willing to give this a try? This is a youth group activity.
Let's give it a go.
So, a little hint. You probably want to try and remember a couple of the things that they tell you, and I will bring it up later. So, I got a couple of bags of noodles.
Okay.
It took me a while to slice these up.
Shall I spread them out?
That would be wonderful. And you can grab a bag, and I'll take a bag this way. Did anyone learn anything new today?
Yes, I learned lots of new things about food. Yeah.
Very good. Anything worth sharing?
She's got 4 sisters and I don't know where they are.
So you're saying you basically created questions out of learning new things. That's fantastic. So I hope that was an enjoyable activity. I know it's not our usual Sunday activities that we do, but that's one that we've done at youth group, and I'm going to tie it back, I promise, to everything else. But for now we're going to move on. I'll leave you lingering and wait to see what we'll do with that. I was given free rein on topics today, which I hate. I generally find, like, when you haven't got a whole lot of time to do your homework and research into something and decide what to talk, like deciding what to talk about takes a lot of that time away. And then I'm not a decisive person, so, you know, making brainstorms and, yeah. Anyway, the thought of belonging came to my mind, which didn't surprise me. It's one of the things we've been looking at in my studies. And then I was like, I don't know about belonging. I just feel like Oaks is so good at community that, like, maybe it's not the topic to talk about. So I'm going to push that one aside. You know, sometimes you try to push a thought away, and it just comes back. And it comes back again, and it comes back again. And I'm pretty sure belonging came to my mind just as many times as any other ideas came to my mind. So I kind of gave in eventually. And as I was thinking and praying, I was reminded of a passage, which I really, really love in Romans. So we're going to go to that. But before I'm going to share... before that, we're going to get into a little bit of discussion. So, I have a question for you, and I've brought the whiteboard because that's how I like to do things. and we're going to have some discussion. What comes to mind when you hear the word belonging? All right? Not a rhetorical question.
Longing.
Perfect.
Having the right to be part of something.
Sorry if anyone can't see the whiteboard, but I'll read them out as well. Having the right to be part of something.
Family.
Family, very good.
Relationship.
Relationship.
Identity.
Identity, nice.
You're accepted.
Accepted. Oh, helps if I can spell the word.
Community. Citizenship.
Community and citizenship.
Did I hear kinship or not?
Kinship,
Yes, I don't know.
nice. Citizenship was the other one we had, but kinship is also very good.
I thought I heard somebody say kinship.
I think hospitality and monarchy.
I'm not going to try and spell it.
Two ways in the middle. Some sort of responsibility.
Responsibility and,
Security.
yep. And security. Excuse my handwriting. Cool. All right, I feel like that's a pretty good start. So the next point, we maybe won't go into the whiteboard for the next question, just because a lot of it's already on the whiteboard. And I knew this would happen, because the first question was what words comes to mind when you hear the word belonging? The second question is what places come to mind when you hear the word belonging?
Church.
Family?
Family? Yep. So I mean I could go down here and just go a little extra one next to family and church.
And community.
Community?
Well, the age that Esther and I are at would be heaven.
Heaven.
It's your place of work.
Yep. I'm going to put one, Mum and Dad's house. Which is still the house that I grew up in for my entire life. Lived there for 22 years.
The dinner table.
Dinner table, nice. Cool. Any more? I got one more question for you after this. Cool. Alright, last question for now. What people come to mind when you think of the word belonging? So again, it's a bit repetitive, isn't it?
I think
Yeah. Family's the golden word at the moment.
tipuna for me now, it's looking back to those who've gone before me in my family.
My children.
Children. Right. I'm going to put this down, just because it's going to fall away. Okay, now we're all in the modes of thinking about belonging. And this is the kind of stuff that I do when I start to write a sermon, is I do a big colourful brainstorm, and it has to be in colours. So, a little bit of the story, well, two stories, that I don't think I've shared here before. When I first came to this building, was coming to youth group, and what had happened is my old youth group at Discovery got so small that it shut down. The three of us that were left merged with this youth group. And I was in year 13, I would have been 16-ish, 17. And to be completely honest, probably the main reason I came was because my boyfriend at the time was there. Yeah, that didn't last very long. So I think it was about a term before we broke up. And it was really awkward because he knew everyone, he was friends with everyone, but I didn't know everyone. And to be completely honest with you, if it wasn't for a certain curly-haired family that isn't here today, I would have left pretty quickly. Because I felt invisible. And at that point, I've had so many conversations with people now who are like, man, there was one point where youth group was really cliquey, and everyone kind of had their cool groups, and I didn't feel like I was in any of those groups, and I'm so glad I talk to people now. I've talked to some new girls' parents that have just started coming along, and she was telling her how her daughter came home and was like, no one judges me. And she's just come from a cliquey youth group. But there were some certain curly-haired girls who took me under their wing and befriended me very quickly. And I was stubborn, and I decided that I wasn't going to leave because it was awkward. So I stuck around, and I made some fantastic friendships. It took a little bit longer. But I'm so glad that I did. And I loved it at the youth group, and I still do. Obviously I stuck around longer than most. I think I've been there 8 years now. And then the difference when I came to Oaks was quite interesting, because I'd been at the youth group for probably about 4 years, as one of the key leaders for probably 2 or 3 years at that point. And then I just decided, oh, I should probably go to a church. I don't know what church I should go to. Maybe I'll just start with the church where my youth group is. And I walked in, and there was hardly anyone there. But then again, that curly-haired family was there. You guys all know who this is, I'm pretty sure. But within a couple of weeks, the number of people who came up to me and started talking to me, and they were like, oh, you're Hannah Millar. You're the girl who does the youth group stuff. Oh, we're so excited to meet you. But the one that really struck me was the number of people who said, I've been praying for you. And this was a foreign concept for me, that someone was praying so personally and specifically for me who had never met me in person. And that's something that really screams belonging to me before I even came here. That went on a bit longer than I was planning. So I'm going to move on to the next point, which I think is my Romans passage. Yes. So Romans 11:16 to 21. A little bit of background context here is that this passage is talking about and to the Gentiles, the non-Jews, being adopted into the family of God, and they're talking about being grafted into the vine, which is fantastic imagery that I love. So I'll read that out. If the part of the dough offered as first fruit is holy, then the whole batch is holy. If the root is holy, so are the branches. If some of the branches have been broken off, and you, though a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing sap of the olive root, do not consider yourself to be superior to those other branches. If you do, consider this: you do not support the root, but the root supports you. You will say then, branches were broken off so that I could be grafted in. Granted, but they were broken off because of unbelief, and you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but tremble. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he will not spare you either. It starts off very nice, and then it ends a little bit unsettling. So I've broken this into two parts. The writing's a little bit small, sorry, because there's two sections of focus and kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Perspective that they have in these two different parts. So the first part is very small. I'm sorry. If the root is holy, so are the branches. If some of the branches have been broken off, and you, though a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others, now share the nourishing sap from the olive root. And I've stopped it there because that was halfway through a sentence. It's really annoying, I'm sorry. So to summarise that, the way I read that is you don't have to be born into a Christian family to be adopted into it. Okay? Those of us who are born into Christian families, we have to admit that we are privileged indeed when it comes to our finding our faith. We have parents, hopefully, who have guided us in a positive manner, and other family members, and statistics which you can't read the link very easily. But it's ministrytochildren.com. Has some statistics from this year that said 50.5% of the 400 Christians that they surveyed said that a key influencing factor for them coming to faith was their parents. 24% of those 400 said that key influencing facts were other family members. You have to recognise that we've got a good starting point when we're already growing on the vine right from the start. And this passage reminds us that those who have been adopted in, that came from different starting points, are just as chosen and just as loved. I shouldn't have left my notes on the PowerPoint because now I have to keep looking. But one thing, I'm quite a green thumb, if you don't know that. My mum's also a green thumb. What does grafting involve, usually?
Cutting.
Cutting? Yeah.
Sharp knife.
Sharp, yeah.
Tender care.
Tender care, yep. Yeah, I found it, we did bud grafting at one point at school, and it's really hard not to squish the bud as you're trying to cut it out. It often involves ripping off extra leaves, you know, taking it away from its original environment, leaving the original plant behind often. If you're not born into a Christian family, it's a big step to come into one. But God reminds us that these people are worthy of being in the family. Equally worthy as well. So this first passage shows an image of adoption. The second part of it, I'll read it from here because it's easier. Do not consider yourself to be superior to those other branches. If you do consider this, you do not support the root, but the root supports you. You will say then, branches were broken off so that I could be grafted in. Granted. But they were broken off because of unbelief. And you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but tremble. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he will not spare you either. That would have been easy for me to grab that top bit and just leave this bit behind. But I've learnt that you really shouldn't take the Bible out of context just so that you can get the light and fluffy parts. So, this is a warning to the Gentiles, specifically to the Gentiles who were adopted in, that they shouldn't get too big-headed and say, oh yeah, God specifically chose me and pulled me in and grafted me in because I'm extra special. There's emphasis that we are equally chosen. Each branch gets nourishment from the vine just as much as the others. And one thing that I found quite interesting is that it is specifically to the Gentiles, but then I remembered this is the book of Romans. So it would have been written majority to the Gentiles. So he was speaking to the audience there, and there's plenty of other places that warn the Jews or the people from Jewish backgrounds not to get big-headed either. So, one key line that really stood out to me: you do not support the root, but the root supports you. And like I said, quite a green thumb. I realised the other day that I have no idea how many plants are in my house, so I counted them. Does anyone want to guess? Pot plants this is. 15? You're very close.
I do visit your house, so.
Yeah. These are my plants. It would be 15 if you count Alistair's surviving plant. I have 14 if you count my aquatic plants. There's 18. I like plants, and so this imagery speaks to me a lot. But this is one plant in my house. If you can see it, does anyone know what this is? The monstera. There we go. Also known as a fruit salad plant, and it's big. If you can't tell from there, I measured it this morning. It goes up to my collarbone.
Wow.
It's very big. I got it January, February this year, and it was maybe this big. So I'm very proud of this plant. But what happened a couple of days after I took that photo, this happened. And I'm still working on fixing that. It's currently leaning against the little side table. But what happened with monstera is they've got these vines. It's kind of like a sideways trunk that grows along the ground, and the roots come out the bottom and then the leaves go out the top. They're called rhizomes. And what happens is monsteras grow towards the sun. Okay? So it was growing along, and I noticed that it was very quickly going over the edge of the pot. So I turned it towards the sun so that it would go like this. And then what do you think happened? If the roots come out the bottom, and it's going like this, the roots were coming out here. And the roots weren't getting into the soil very easily, which meant that it was growing steadily, but it couldn't support its own weight. And I made the mistake of not staking it. So I am in the process of restoring my beautiful monstera. But it's a great image of those who get a little bit too big-headed and forget that the nutrients comes from the vine, from the soil. So I want to remember that in my...
It requires pruning, unfortunately.
That one does. Yeah, so that's my little humble moment of I don't know everything about plants. So another passage in Romans, Romans 8:14 to 17. For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God. The Spirit you received does not make you slaves, so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship. And by him we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in his suffering, in order that we may also share in his glory. A couple of things that stuck out to me. You guys know what Abba translates to? Father. More specifically, Daddy or Papa. So this is, I missed a step, that's alright. This is personal. It's not those, posh, proper little boys going, Father, who don't really have a strong connection with their father, and they have to call them the proper name. This is Daddy. This is Papa. This is in my family, my dad is Pa. Purely because I call my mum Ma. So it's Ma and Pa. Don't know how that happened. The Spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship. How did we receive the Spirit? It's written on there, you get the answer. Through Christ. And the other thing that I noticed in this passage, if we are heirs, co-heirs with Christ, each of us are co-heirs with Christ, and we're also co-heirs with each other. We need to share the kingdom, our family, our belonging, our community. We all belong together. We need to reach out to each other and make each other feel welcome. This was supposed to be a video, but I couldn't download it. So I'm going to share the story. In my studies, we watched a short video on a guy called Dr. Baxter Kruger being interviewed. He's done lots of stuff, lots and lots of speaking, and I think he's written some books. But what he was talking about was reflecting on his time with his son. Okay, so he's sitting in the lounge, doing whatever he's doing, reading a newspaper, doing some work, whatever, sitting in the lounge, and his little boy comes around the corner and looks at him dressed in full Rambo army suit. So he's got his costume on, he's got his face paint on, he's got everything all ready to go, right? And then the second little boy turns up, also full costume, ready to go, does the little scowly thing. He's never met the second kid before, okay? But all of a sudden he's looking up and he's like, okay, what's going on? And the kids charge at him. And it's rough and tumble play, and he's into it. He's like, cool, this is great, this is my son, I'm playing with my son and his friend. The interesting thing is that he notes, if you take his son out of the picture, the friend would never have done that. You're not going to walk into a stranger's house and start tackling some old dude that you don't know. You're not going to do that. But if God is the Father and Jesus is the Son, Jesus is playing with his friend and he says, hey, we should do this. I don't know your dad. I've never met him before. It's like, nah, he's cool. I know him, and he'll, as long as I'm there, you'll be fine. We can hang out together and play with him. He's cool, I really love playing rough and tumble with him, and he's always gets really into it. He's really fun, he's really kind, he's really caring. He's a cool dad. But you take the son out of the picture, like I said, you're not going to walk into his house and start tackling him. That is our relationship with God and with Christ. We come to God through Christ. It's like a bridge. Without that bridge, there's a lot of water to wade through. So we have to remember Christ is that connection. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous video. If you want it, I'll find you the link. But my issue was that it was a part of a 30-minute video and I wanted to cut out 3 minutes. But it's this fantastic image. So, what about, we're rounding up soon. Don't worry, I'm not going to keep you here forever. What about those who don't feel welcomed or accepted by the family of God? And I'm talking about the church. Because there's a lot of people, and it's no secret that there's a lot of people out there who feel like they've been rejected by the church, not necessarily by God, but by the church. And say, nah, they don't think I'm good enough, they look down on me. But we can also overlook, I'm really sorry for my PowerPoint not being very, very clear, we also tend to overlook that there's people who may not feel rejected by the family of God, but they don't necessarily feel welcomed. There's the people that come in and sit at the back, and then as soon as it's over, no one starts talking to them and they slip out the door before you even notice. It's the people that you really struggle to remember their names of. Or you're standing there and you're just like, I don't know how to make conversation with you. And this one has been confronting for me because I really struggle to make small talk and make new conversation with people. I'd much rather stick to the people that I know. And that's one thing that we tend to do, that I tend to do, we stick with the people that we know and have conversations with them. And that's great to build deeper relationships with them, but we also want to build relationships with the whole family of God and make everyone feel like they belong and know that they do. So, last bit of discussion. I won't do the whiteboard. What can we do to make people feel like they belong?
Simple, show an interest in
Yeah, show interest.
it. Not be pre-judgmental.
Yep. Listen. That's a very good one.
Ask the questions. There's no wrong with questions.
Yep.
If you get it wrong, people are willing to correct you.
Yep.
So there's a bit more of a conversation.
Yep. Surely we've got more.
I think be aware that people often feel they don't belong. Just even being aware, I'm catching up with my friends, but this new person just can have a real sense of I'm on the outside, I don't belong. So I think even if we're aware that people think like this, and that is half the issue.
And a lot of people, the first 1 or 2 times they come, everyone's really excited and they want to talk to them, and then I've seen you before.
Yeah.
There's a noodle. I've seen you before, I've talked to you before. Then you go back to my other friends. Any more? I've got a few to help us if we haven't thought of them. Got through a lot.
Ask them for a meal.
Yep. Food is a good one.
Remember their name.
Yep.
Pray for them.
Pray for them. Yep.
Tell them you pray for them.
Yep. Very good.
Hospitality.
Yes. Yep. Hospitality.
Inviting into
Yeah.
your home.
Yep. Even if they say no, the first once or twice, like if they come to church, I'm having lunch after church, do you want to come over? They might say no this week, doesn't mean they'll say no next week. It's continued hospitality. Yep. Right, I've got a few points here. We've done most of them. Remember their name. For young people coming of age, recognising their maturity and their adulthood is big. One-on-one support offering mentoring, coaching. A lot of people, like, you have those small conversations when you're at church, but if you don't have someone that you're consistently going on that's specifically interested in you, then it's easier to slip away. Opportunities for growth. Some people just want to feel like they can do stuff with their hands. That's how I started a youth group. Oh, I don't really want to stick around to talk to people, but I can do the dishes. And then someone else would do the dishes with me and conversation comes naturally. Give them responsibilities and purpose. Invitation, we've had that. Food, should put food there a couple more times. And tea and coffee. And praying for them, that was very good that you guys had that. Praying for them, but also letting them know that you were praying for them. That was the big thing right at the start. I know it was a long time ago, letting them know. When I came here and people said, oh, we've been praying for you, I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. But it took me back a bit. Okay. And the last point is to remember the noodle game. So the idea here, I know it's been a while since you did your crazy noodle activity. Do people still remember something that their partner said? Hopefully. I won't blame you if you don't, it's quite hard. So the idea is when you do games like this, what they do is you tell your youth leaders when you're playing these games to try really, really hard. You don't have to remember everything, but remember one or two things. So I think it was Esther you said you learned that Linda has 4 sisters and you have no idea where they are. That's a question you can ask her later. And that is a foot in the door for further conversation, further community, further relationship. And it communicates to them, I'm interested in knowing more about your life. Doesn't have to be a big thing. Note one thing they're interested in. Oh, Hannah, you really like plants. Why do you have so many plants? That's not a hint, that's just what came to my head. Although you're welcome to talk to me about plants. And yeah, so the idea of the activity is to start the conversation, but the thing is you don't need the noodles to do this game, challenge, life, community. All you need to do is have a conversation and be like, okay, if I forget everything else about that conversation, I'm going to try and remember their name, and I'm going to try and remember one thing that I can ask them about next week. Here's your challenge. Right, I have no idea what the time is. A little bit long. Okay, so I'm going to close us off in prayer, and then I believe we have some morning tea, which is a great time to extend your noodle game conversations, or to find out more from what someone else's noodle games were. Alright, so I'll close off in prayer. Yeah, Lord, thank you. Thank you that you welcome us into your family, that you've adopted us in, and that you love us, Lord, and teach us to love others as you have loved us. Soften our hearts. Show us how to be accepting and loving and caring. Give us the attention spans that we need and the memories that we need to remember just enough to make someone feel like they are welcomed and that they belong. Lord, be with us in the week to come. Guide us in every step that we take. And Lord, thank you. Thank you that we can be a part of your family. Amen.